Entire armies broke and fled at the sight of their banners. Some units killed at a ratio of 1 to 20. Others shattered enemy mines before swords were drawn. The deadliest military units in history weren't legends. They were engineered for lethal efficiency, forged by cultures obsessed with turning men into weapons. What made them so unstoppable? And how did discipline, terror, and early firepower transform entire eras of war? This is where history's most feared soldiers begin. Spartan society was engineered for war from the ground up. At age 7, boys left their families for the agoge, a relentless state-run system that replaced comfort with discipline and childhood with drill. For 23 years, every Spartan male learned to endure hunger, cold, pain, and fear. By the time a man earned full citizenship at 30, he had trained longer and harder than any other Greek soldier would in a lifetime. This institutional upbringing forged a rare kind of cohesion. On the battlefield, the phalanx became the ultimate expression of that unity, each shield overlapping, each spear projecting forward, every movement drilled until it was reflex. In the narrow pass at Thermopylae, this discipline turned 300 Spartans and their 7,000 Greek allies into a killing machine. Modern historians estimate that over 3 days, the defenders inflicted as many as 20,000 casualties on the Persian army, despite facing a force possibly 10 times their size. In the final phase, with only a few hundred left holding the line, the kill ratio may have reached as high as 13 or even 20 Persians for every Greek who fell. The numbers are debated, but the outcome is not. The Spartans proved that discipline and training could multiply lethality far beyond raw numbers, setting a standard for organized violence that echoed through every era of warfare that followed. In the world of the Vikings, berserkers stood apart, a breed of warriors so feared that their very presence could unnerve entire armies. Old Norse sagas describe these men as entering a state called berserkergang, where they howled like wolves, bit into their shields, and fought with a fury that made them seem invulnerable to pain or steel. They charged into battle without armor, eyes wild, muscles tensed, often at the very front of a chieftain's retinue. The sagas link their trance-like rage to rituals honoring Odin, and some scholars, like Neil Price, see this as a deliberate psychological weapon, an engineered state, not mere madness. Debate endures over whether their fury came from hallucinogenic mushrooms or from ritual, chanting, and shared belief. What is clear is the effect. Enemies broke ranks at the sight of berserkers, and some settlements surrendered rather than face them. Medieval Icelandic and Norwegian law codes eventually outlawed berserkergang, classifying it as a threat to social order, a sign that this was more than legend. The berserkers' value lay not in numbers killed, but in the raw terror they inspired, turning psychological shock into a weapon as devastating as any sword or axe. The Janissary Corps began with a single state-driven idea. The Ottomans took boys from Christian families in the Balkans, converted them, and raised them in barracks from childhood. This was the Devsirme, an irregular levy that sifted thousands for physical strength, intelligence, and obedience. Only a fraction ever became Janissaries. Those who did found themselves part of a salaried corps, drilled year-round, forbidden to marry or own property, and loyal only to the Sultan. By the mid-15th century, Ottoman payroll records show just 6,000 to 8,000 Janissaries at full strength, anchoring armies that sometimes numbered 100,000. Their discipline and firepower set them apart. At the Siege of Constantinople in 1453, after weeks of bombardment and human wave assaults, the Janissaries advanced at dawn in tight formation. Contemporary chronicles describe their synchronized march, the steady beat of drums, and a wall of coordinated gunfire from matchlocks and bows. They fired in organized succession from trenches, suppressing defenders and covering the final assault. When a breach finally opened near the gate of St. Romanos, it was the Janissaries who poured through, overwhelming the exhausted Byzantines. Their use of firearms was systematic, decades ahead of most European rivals. As a standing state-engineered infantry, the Janissaries brought a new kind of lethality to the battlefield. relentless, professional, and always ready to move at the Sultan's command. In the hills of Nepal, the path to becoming a Gurkha begins with a competition that most never finish. Tens of thousands of young men gather each year, each hoping to claim one of just a few hundred places in the Brigade of Gurkhas, a selection rate of less than 1%. The process is legendary for its difficulty. The Dauko race requires carrying a 45-pound basket up steep mountain trails, followed by medical checks, interviews, and written tests. Those who pass are not just physically tough. They are already marked by a culture that prizes endurance, loyalty, and the willingness to fight at close quarters. The kukri, a curved blade carried by every Gurkha, is more than a weapon. It is a kukri, a symbol of identity and a tool of psychological warfare. British officers in both world wars described Gurkha units as specialists in night raids and hand-to-hand combat, often closing with the enemy when others would hold back. The record is written in decorations. In the Second World War alone, Gurkha battalions earned more than 2,000 awards for bravery. Over the course of the 20th century, Gurkha soldiers and their officers have been awarded upwards of 20 Victoria Crosses, one of the highest rates per capita in any British unit. In the Falklands War, that reputation often preceded them. As Gurkha battalions advanced toward Argentine positions near Mount William, British commanders reported that some outposts were abandoned before contact. Argentine soldiers, already exhausted and demoralized, decided they would rather withdraw than face the men with kukris. The Gurkhas' impact on the battlefield has always been measured not just in casualties inflicted, but in the fear they inspire. For more than 2 centuries, their presence alone has been enough to change the outcome of a fight. Basic underwater demolition and SEAL training starts with hundreds of candidates and finishes with a handful. On average, only 2 out of every 10 who begin will ever earn the trident. The process is relentless. 6 months of surf torture, timed swims, forced marches, and sleep deprivation are designed to expose any weakness of body or mind. Those who make it through emerge as multi-domain operators, trained not just to fight on land, but to infiltrate by sea, to parachute from high altitude, and to coordinate precision strikes with the latest intelligence and technology. During the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, SEAL teams became the sharp end of American special operations. They executed thousands of direct action raids, often in small units of 6 to 12 men, moving at night, striking compounds, capturing or eliminating high-value targets, and vanishing before local forces could react. After-action reports describe missions where SEALs faced enemy numbers several times their own, yet routinely accomplished objectives with minimal or zero casualties. The 2011 Abbottabad raid stands as the clearest example. 24 operators inserted deep into hostile territory, cleared a fortified compound, killed Osama bin Laden, and exfiltrated, all in under 40 minutes, with 0 American losses. The mission's precision and outcome were the product of a culture where failure in training is expected, but failure in combat is not an option. In the modern era, the deadliest units are defined not by their size, but by the reach and certainty of their actions. One team, one target, one outcome. The Keshik, the imperial guard of the Mongol Khans, stood at the center of the fastest and most devastating conquest campaign in human history. Numbering just over 10,000, these warriors were selected for absolute loyalty and skill, drawn from the best horsemen and archers of the steppe. Every member was expected to hit targets at full gallop, loose arrows in rapid succession, and maneuver across open country with a discipline that rivaled the strictest infantry formations of any age. Their signature tactic, the feigned retreat, turned enemy confidence into disaster. Time and again, Mongol forces appeared to break and flee, only to lure pursuers into overextension, then wheel back in coordinated counterattack. At the Kalka River in 1223, this doctrine led to the destruction of a numerically superior Rus and Cuman coalition, with the Keshik at the command corps, orchestrating the encirclement and final slaughter. The campaigns that followed left entire regions depopulated. Modern demographic reconstructions estimate that Mongol conquests caused the deaths of some 30 to 40 million people, roughly 1 in 10 humans alive at the time. while the Keshik were a small cadre among vast Mongol armies. Their role as the operational nucleus amplified the lethality of every campaign. Chroniclers from Persia to China describe cities destroyed, populations annihilated, and terror spreading far ahead of the advancing cavalry. The psychological impact was so severe that cities sometimes surrendered without a fight, hoping to avoid the fate of those that resisted. No other military cohort, ancient or modern, can be linked to a greater share of global population loss within a single century. By per-soldier impact and demographic consequence, the Keshik legacy stands unmatched. Centuries later, military units still study and adapt the ruthlessness, discipline, and psychological dominance these forces perfected. As the tools of war change, the search for decisive, fear-inducing power endures. The deadliest legacy isn't a body count, it's the blueprint for how nations still engineer warriors today.